The original Boss Baby was likely one of the most maligned family movies before it even premiered just for its concept, feeling like the kind of movie parody that would be featured in The Critic.
I've got some new partners for you. A woman, a cute little kid, an ugly old dog, a dinosaur, and a leprechaun.
But it ultimately turned out to be neither spectacular nor terrible, somewhat helped by the fact that the Emoji Movie also came out that year, which kind of put things in perspective. In fact, its current reputation might be sufficiently higher had it not gotten nominated for an Oscar over A Silent Voice.
I voted for it because my kid liked it.
Resulting in it continuing to be maligned on principle and older audiences being completely uninterested in its sequel. But I do believe that my initial review of it was unfair and also kind of crap, and also I tried to compare it to Home for some reason. Years later, I barely remember anything about it, though this movie did jog some of my memory. I did like the imagination sequences, Alec Baldwin does well as the titular character, who is amusing enough, and it did have an oddly dramatic and emotional climax. But its animation was frequently hectic. It has what is probably still the dumbest and shortest third-act breakup I've ever seen, but its biggest weakness, though it managed to capture some of the feelings of jealousy and competition in response to a new sibling, I never bought that the relationship of the two main characters ever grew to the point where they felt like actual brothers. I did not believe for a second that Baldwin would have been willing to give up business for anything, robbing some of the effectiveness of said emotional climax. The sequel, Family Business, features the boys now all grown up, Tim as a stay-at-home dad and Ted as, shockingly, a businessman, and when another crisis emerges, Tim's daughter Tina reverts them to their models from the first movie so we can basically do the same movie again. Which is more or less the case. This does, in large stretches, feel like exactly the same movie. The same ridiculous concept, which nonetheless is perfectly fine for a family-oriented animated film. The same slightly off-putting character designs for everyone that isn't a baby. Some of the same nifty imagination scenes, but then the same million-miles-an-hour manic animation sequences, particularly when involving a chase sequence. Sure, the insane horse car chase through the city has a lot of funny and amusing bits of animation when isolated into 10-second segments, but as a full sequence, I did eventually reach the point of stop the ride, I want to get off, alert me when this is over. But that's not all too surprising coming from me. I notoriously have low tolerance for scenes that are too visually busy, even when they are very impressive. However, plenty of other critics have also used words like manic, hectic, frantic, and hyperactive. So, you know, maybe it's not just me. But it's not just the action. The character animation can sometimes be pretty over the top as well, particularly when it concerns the villain of the story, played by Jeff Goldblum. And as much as I love Jeff Goldblum, his monotone voice was not exactly a great match for the extreme gestures of his character. I know that in some cases that exact contrast can be a source of comedy, which might have been the intent. It's almost what they do with Ted, except that Alec Baldwin's steady drawl actually matches his character's steady demeanor, even when confronted with ridiculous situations. I'm so in control doing this crazy thing that I barely need to raise my voice. And I believe that Jeff Goldblum's character was meant to capture a similar feeling, as many times during the film comparisons are made between the two characters, but many of his expressions are supposed to relay a feeling of giddiness or excitement, so his monotone seems like a bit of an ill fit. But just as a villain, he was fine. I liked him better than the first one, he was still fun. So not entirely shockingly, I'm not crazy about this film, but I do believe that I enjoyed it more than the first one. I certainly did appreciate that I didn't need to go all the way to the theater to see it. I did not want this to be my first movie back in theaters. It's probably gonna be like Candyman or something. But one personal factor that did engage me was that the main set piece of the film was this advanced learning children's academy, which aside from just being a gorgeous looking building, preschool is my wheelhouse. Oh boy, I can't wait to make a bunch of meaningless nitpicks about all the shit they do wrong, though mostly it was just the one major thing that was fairly obvious. How are there no teachers here? Really? This guy taught every single class at the same time by himself. Sure, I can appreciate the encouragement of independence and self-motivation for the older kids, but you left babies alone in a room with so many choking hazards. Well, that's it. Movie ruined. Though I want that timeout capsule. I will pay anything to obtain it. However, given how the children in the film regarded it with such dread, did they change the nature of it in the last second? Was the first draft of what this was much more scary looking? Or did it try to drown them as well? Ideally, I would have liked to see them address the way too high expectations for academic achievement in children, but ultimately, since the film wasn't really about that, the direction they decided to go in by having Tim already dislike the place until he's seen that his daughter is in her element there was perfectly fine direction to go in. However, what I was less thrilled about was having her real problem being that she's not good at singing, and then to have her father teach her to sing in a 2-minute song that includes the lyrics, "It's easy if you just try." I mean, it is a visually compelling song sequence, just the fact that I could tell that it was building up to a cutesy child singing climax, which I tend not to be crazy about. I would have just preferred it if her big climactic moment would have been for her to march up to that a-hole kid director and go, "You know what? I don't need to be in this. I am literally amazing at 10,000 other things. I don't have anything to prove to you." I mean, it's a cute father-daughter moment. It is a minor issue, as is my usual skepticism of another mainstream kids film depicting the relationship between a father and daughter, and my usual eye-rolling when said concept is his pseudo-jealousy issues when his daughter pays attention to literally anything that is not him. I know it's not a big deal to anyone else, but it still annoys me. However, the more significant factor why I feel more positively toward this film than the first is the stronger theme of familial love that I felt all throughout it. Sure, obviously between Tim and his daughters, though I am particularly of a fan of when Tina reveals herself to Tim, who has apparently not had his memory erased for some reason, but the bond and joy they share is truly adorable. In fact, Tina in general was a character that I just enjoyed, and only partially because she already played the ultimate boss in Princess Carolyn. But I also enjoyed the dynamic that she had with Ted, where she represented the new hip generation of good management leaders that actually cares about mental health and family time, which naturally horrified him. She's incredibly competent, funny, and even manipulative, but she also really cares about people. And the heart-to-heart she has with Ted is genuinely endearing. But of course, this is most evident in the relationship between Tim and Ted, or Lindsay and Leslie, as now they have actual history and baggage giving their dynamic some genuine emotional weight, as opposed to the connection that the first tried to make us believe they had and just didn't. Which is significant because I remember during the third act of the first movie, I was getting bored because I just didn't care. But I did like the characters in this film, so I cared about the climax, and also just thought it was a way more interesting climax. Sure, there's still a lot of exaggerated aggression, which still comes with the territory with siblings, which still can and does get old, but having the reason for it be a lot more broad and non-specific than I was expecting, actually I think made it a bit more realistic. Like, it doesn't all tie back to one particular incident where it all went wrong, they just grew apart over the years. It happens. But what they could have done to make their dynamic feel even more familiar and intimate would be to call back to particular experiences or memories they had when they were growing up together, but then that would be different from the first movie, now wouldn't it? This wouldn't have been my first choice for DreamWorks to spend its time and money, but just as a family film about family, you know what? It's nice. It is. It's no masterpiece, but it's okay.